I stood in that courthouse hallway, watching my younger brother Adam being led away in handcuffs after receiving a 6-year sentence for embezzlement. Our mother Sarah screamed at me, her voice echoing off the marble walls, accusing me of lying and claiming Adam was framed out of jealousy. I reflected on 28 years of being the forgotten son, while Adam received all the love, opportunities, and trust. Today, the golden child finally faced consequences, but I knew this was just the beginning of a deeper family reckoning that would change everything forever. My name is Bradford, and at 32 years old, I had spent my entire life living in the shadow of my younger brother Adam. While I worked as a mid-level accountant at Henderson & Associates, scraping by on a modest salary, Adam had always been the family favorite since the day he was born 28 years ago. He was the star athlete in high school, the valedictorian who received a full scholarship, and later earned his MBA from one of the most prestigious universities in the country. Our father Robert owned a successful construction company that had been in our family for 3 generations. He was a hard-working man who built his empire from nothing, but he never missed an opportunity to compare me unfavorably to Adam. Every family dinner became a recitation of Adam's latest achievements, while my own accomplishments went unnoticed. When I graduated from State College, with a degree in accounting, paying my own way through school with student loans and part-time jobs, my father barely acknowledged it. When Adam graduated with his MBA, they threw him a party that cost more than my entire year's tuition. My mother Sarah was perhaps even worse. She constantly defended Adam's every mistake while criticizing my achievements with surgical precision. If Adam came home drunk from a college party, it was because he was under stress from his demanding coursework. If I stayed out past midnight studying for finals, I was being irresponsible and inconsiderate. She would find fault in everything I did, from the way I dressed to the career path I chose, all while praising Adam for breathing. The inequality became even more apparent when it came to family business involvement. Every time I expressed interest in joining the construction company, my father would find excuses to keep me out. He claimed I lacked the leadership qualities necessary for the family business, that my personality was too analytical and not dynamic enough for construction work. But the moment Adam graduated with his MBA, he was immediately given an executive position as Chief Financial Officer, despite having 0 experience in construction or finance. For years, I watched as Adam received every opportunity I had been denied. While I struggled to pay off student loans and build my modest career, Adam was handed a 6-figure salary, a company car, and a corner office. The favoritism was so blatant that even our extended family members began to notice, though none of them ever said anything directly to me. 3 months ago, everything changed when my father asked me to review the company's books during a routine family business consultation. He claimed it was just a formality, something the insurance company required for their annual policy renewal. I should have been suspicious of his sudden willingness to involve me, but I was so grateful for any acknowledgement of my professional skills that I agreed immediately. As I pored over the financial records in my small apartment, working late into the night after my regular job, I began to notice irregularities that made my stomach turn. There were systematic fund transfers that didn't match any legitimate business expenses, falsified invoices from vendors I couldn't verify, and mysterious cash withdrawals that totaled nearly $2 million over a 3-year period. The more I dug, the more obvious it became that someone had been embezzling from the family company on a massive scale. The evidence pointed directly to Adam. As CFO, he had access to all the financial systems, and his electronic signature was on every fraudulent transaction. The pattern was sophisticated but not perfect, and my trained eye caught the discrepancies that a casual observer would miss. I realized that my brother, the golden child who could do no wrong, had been systematically stealing from our family for years. I faced an impossible moral dilemma. Exposing Adam would destroy our family and potentially send my brother to prison. But allowing the embezzlement to continue would eventually bankrupt the company my father had spent his life building, putting dozens of employees out of work and destroying our family's legacy. I spent sleepless nights weighing my options, knowing that either choice would tear our family apart. Finally, I decided to approach Adam privately. I arranged to meet him at a coffee shop downtown, far from the office and our family home. When I showed him the evidence I had compiled, His confident facade crumbled instantly. The brother I had envied for so many years broke down in tears, admitting to a gambling addiction that had spiraled completely out of control. Adam confessed that he owed massive debts to dangerous people, loan sharks who had threatened not only his life, but the lives of our entire family. He had started with small amounts, thinking he could replace the money before anyone noticed, but the gambling addiction consumed him. Every time he thought he had hit bottom, he found new ways to access company funds, always believing that the next big win would solve all his problems. Through his tears, Adam begged me to help cover it up. He promised to repay everything, claimed he was getting help for his addiction, and swore on our mother's life that he would never steal another penny. Despite decades of resentment, I found myself moved by his vulnerability. This was my little brother, the same kid I had protected from bullies in elementary school, and he needed my help. Against my better judgment, I agreed to help him. We worked together to create a repayment plan using my life savings and personal loans I would take against my modest assets. I liquidated my retirement account, took a second mortgage on my small condo, and even borrowed money from my credit cards. Over the course of 2 weeks, we managed to replace nearly $400,000 of the stolen money, and I helped Adam create a believable paper trail to explain the temporary discrepancies. I thought we were making progress toward fixing the situation, but I was naive about the depth of Adam's deception. 2 weeks after our emotional conversation, while conducting a follow-up review of the company's finances, I discovered that Adam had never stopped embezzling. Instead of using my help as a chance to come clean, he had used it as cover to steal an additional $300,000. But the betrayal went even deeper than continued theft. I learned from our mutual friend Danny that Adam had been spreading rumors throughout our social circle that I was the one with gambling problems. He told people that I had been acting strangely, making desperate financial moves, and asking suspicious questions about the family business. He painted a picture of me as an unstable, jealous older brother who was looking for ways to sabotage his success. When I confronted our parents about Adam's theft, armed with irrefutable evidence, they refused to believe me. Instead, they believed Adam's version of events, which portrayed me as a desperate and jealous brother trying to frame him out of resentment. Sarah looked at me with disgust and accused me of trying to destroy Adam out of spite. Robert shook his head sadly and said he always knew I harbored resentment about Adam's success, but he never imagined I would stoop to such desperate measures. The golden child had managed to turn my attempt to save our family into evidence of my own moral failing, and for the first time in my life, I realized that no amount of evidence or truth would ever be enough to overcome their blind favoritism toward Adam. The weeks following my failed attempt to expose Adam became a nightmare that I could never have imagined. Adam's manipulation campaign against me was so sophisticated and thorough that I began to question my own sanity. He didn't just deny my accusations, he systematically dismantled my credibility while positioning himself as the victim of my supposed jealousy and mental instability. Adam told our parents that I had approached him with wild conspiracy theories about missing money from the company. He claimed that when he tried to reason with me, I became violent and threatening, demanding that he help me cover up financial irregularities that I had created. According to his version of events, I had been skimming money from my own accounting clients for months and was desperately trying to shift blame onto him when the walls started closing in. To support his story, Adam produced fake evidence that seemed to show I had been stealing from Henderson and Associates. He had somehow obtained copies of client files and created convincing forgeries that made it appear as though I had been manipulating accounts and redirecting funds to personal accounts. The documentation was so well crafted that even I was momentarily stunned by how legitimate it looked. My mother Sarah became Adam's most vocal defender, calling me at all hours to scream about my betrayal of the family. She accused me of always being jealous of Adam's success and claimed that my accusations were the final proof of the bitter, resentful person I had always been. She told me that I was no longer welcome in their home and that she was ashamed to call me her son. My father, Robert, was more measured in his response, but his disappointment was perhaps even more devastating. He told me quietly that he had always hoped I would grow out of my jealousy toward Adam, but my false accusations had proven that I was fundamentally dishonest and untrustworthy. He said that he could no longer recommend me to any of his business associates, and that my accounting practice would likely suffer once word got out about my alleged theft from clients. The isolation extended far beyond my immediate family. My girlfriend Jessica, whom I had been dating for 2 years and had planned to propose to, began receiving anonymous messages that included copies of the fake evidence Adam had created. The messages detailed my supposed gambling addiction, my financial desperation, and my history of lying to cover up my problems. Jessica confronted me with tears in her eyes, asking how long I had been lying to her about who I really was. My professional reputation began to crumble as rumors spread through our small business community. Someone had sent anonymous tips to the state accounting board, alleging that I had been stealing from clients and manipulating financial records. While I knew the investigation would eventually clear me, the mere existence of an inquiry was enough to damage my credibility with current and potential clients. Meanwhile, Adam continued his embezzlement with even greater boldness, apparently believing that he had successfully neutralized any threat I might pose to his operation. He had learned from our previous confrontation and was now more careful about covering his tracks, but his theft had actually accelerated rather than stopped. I realized that my attempt to help him had only given him more confidence in his ability to manipulate the situation. But Adam's manipulation went far deeper than I had initially realized. As I began to investigate his activities more thoroughly, I discovered that he had been using my accounting credentials to authorize some of the fraudulent transactions. Somehow, he had gained access to my professional passwords and electronic signatures, making it appear as though I had been complicit in the embezzlement scheme from the beginning. The paper trail Adam had created was diabolically clever. It showed a pattern of collaboration between us, with my credentials being used to approve transfers that benefited both of us financially. Any investigator looking at the evidence would conclude that I was not just a co-conspirator, but potentially the mastermind of the entire operation, using my accounting expertise to design and execute the theft. I consulted with attorney Jennifer Walsh, a criminal defense lawyer who had been recommended by a colleague. After reviewing the evidence Adam had manufactured, she told me bluntly that I was in serious legal jeopardy. The fake documentation was sophisticated enough to convince a prosecutor, and my attempts to expose Adam could be interpreted as efforts to shift blame away from myself when I realized I was about to be caught. Jennifer advised me that I needed to gather concrete evidence of Adam's deception before law enforcement became involved. She warned me that once an investigation began, the manufactured evidence against me would be extremely difficult to overcome, especially given Adam's sterling reputation and my family's willingness to testify against me. I began conducting my own investigation into Adam's activities, working nights and weekends to uncover the truth while maintaining my day job and dealing with the ongoing destruction of my personal relationships. What I discovered was far more extensive than simple embezzlement driven by gambling addiction. Adam had created an elaborate network of financial crimes that extended far beyond our family's construction company. He had been stealing from multiple business accounts, creating shell companies to launder money, and living a double life that involved expensive cars, luxury vacations, and high-end entertainment that far exceeded even his generous salary. I found evidence of Adam's connections to professional gamblers and loan sharks, but I also discovered that he owed money to people who were involved in much more serious criminal activities. His debts weren't just gambling-related. He had been borrowing money from organized crime figures to fund a lifestyle of excess that he couldn't maintain even with his theft from the family business. Most shocking of all, I learned that Adam was planning to flee the country with the remaining stolen funds. He had been slowly moving money to offshore accounts and had even applied for a passport under an assumed name. His plan was to disappear completely, leaving behind the wreckage of our family's business and my destroyed reputation. When I confronted Adam with this new evidence, threatening to expose everything to the authorities, he revealed the full extent of his preparation for this moment. He calmly informed me that he had already filed a police report claiming that I had threatened him with violence during our previous confrontation. He showed me a restraining order he had obtained by lying to a judge about my behavior, claiming that I had become increasingly unstable and dangerous as my own crimes were about to be exposed. The restraining order meant that any further contact between us could result in my arrest, effectively silencing me while he completed his plans to escape. Adam had systematically destroyed my reputation, isolated me from my family, and created a legal framework that made me appear to be the dangerous criminal while he played the role of the innocent victim. As I stood in my empty apartment that night, holding the restraining order and realizing the full scope of Adam's betrayal, I understood that he had been planning my downfall for months, perhaps even years. Every act of seeming cooperation, every moment of vulnerability he had shown me, had been calculated moves in a game where I was always intended to be the sacrificial pawn. The true scope of Adam's manipulation became clear over the following weeks as I pieced together the elaborate scheme he had been constructing for months. This wasn't a desperate cover-up by a gambling addict who had gotten in over his head. This was a carefully orchestrated plan to destroy my life while he made his escape with millions of stolen dollars. Through my private investigation, I discovered that Adam had been planning my downfall since the day our father asked me to review the company books. The request hadn't come from the insurance company at all. Adam had suggested it to our father as a way to bring me into the situation so I could be framed for his crimes. He knew that my accounting background would make me the perfect scapegoat, and he had been preparing evidence against me long before I ever discovered his theft. Adam had created a false narrative about my gambling addiction that was supported by months of carefully planted evidence. He had used my credit cards without my knowledge during family gatherings, running up gambling debts at casinos and online betting sites. He had accessed my computer during holiday visits to our parents' house, creating a digital trail that showed extensive research into casino strategies and gambling systems. The fake invoices and financial irregularities that implicated me weren't hastily created forgeries. They were sophisticated documents that had been prepared over months by someone with access to the company's systems and an intimate understanding of accounting procedures. Adam had been slowly building a case against me while continuing his own theft, ensuring that, when the inevitable discovery came, all evidence would point to me rather than him. During one particularly devastating family confrontation, our mother Sarah formally announced that she and our father were disowning me. They had changed their will to leave everything to Adam, including the family business, their home, and all their personal assets. Sarah told me through tears that she never wanted to see me again, that I had broken her heart by trying to destroy Adam out of jealousy and spite. The impact on my professional life was equally catastrophic. My employer Henderson and Associates was forced to place me on administrative leave pending the outcome of the State Accounting Board investigation. Word of the allegations spread quickly through our professional community, and several of my long-term clients canceled their contracts rather than risk association with someone suspected of financial crimes. Jessica finally ended our relationship during a tearful confrontation in which she presented me with a manila envelope containing copies of all the evidence Adam had manufactured against me. She told me that she had wanted to believe in my innocence, but the documentation was too extensive and convincing to ignore. She said she felt like she had been living with a stranger and couldn't trust anything I had ever told her. The isolation was complete and devastating. My few remaining friends distanced themselves as rumors spread throughout our community. People I had known for years crossed the street to avoid speaking to me. My reputation in the small business community where I had worked to build my practice was utterly destroyed. Meanwhile, Detective Maria Santos of the Financial Crimes Unit began her investigation into the embezzlement case. Initially, she focused entirely on me, based on Adam's convincing testimony and the mountain of false evidence he had provided. Adam appeared completely cooperative during his interviews, playing the role of the concerned brother who was devastated by my betrayal, but committed to helping law enforcement recover the stolen funds. When I provided Detective Santos with my own evidence about Adam's activities, she remained skeptical. The documentation I had gathered looked like desperate attempts to shift blame, especially compared to the comprehensive case that had been built against me. Adam's reputation in the community was sterling, while my alleged financial crimes made me appear desperate enough to try any deception to avoid consequences. Realizing that I was facing potential criminal charges for crimes I hadn't committed, I made the desperate decision to sell my car and take out a loan against my apartment to hire a private investigator. I contacted Tommy Walsh, a former police detective who had left the force to start his own investigation service, specializing in white-collar crime. Tommy was expensive, but he was the only person who seemed willing to listen to my side of the story without prejudgment. After reviewing all the evidence, both against me and what I had gathered about Adam, he agreed that something didn't add up. He pointed out several inconsistencies in the case against me that suggested sophisticated manipulation rather than authentic criminal activity. Walsh began investigating Adam's activities with the thoroughness that only a former police officer could provide. Within 2 weeks, he had uncovered Adam's secret gambling debts and his connections to criminal organizations that extended far beyond simple loan sharks. He discovered that Adam had been washing money for an organized crime family through our family's construction company, using legitimate business operations to clean funds from drug trafficking and other illegal activities. The scope of the criminal operation was staggering. Our family's business, which my father had built through decades of honest work, had been used as a front for money laundering activities for nearly 3 years. Adam hadn't just been stealing from the company. He had been using it to process millions of dollars in criminal proceeds, taking a percentage for himself while putting our entire family at risk of federal prosecution. Walsh also discovered that Adam had been planning his escape for months, slowly moving funds to offshore accounts and preparing false identification documents. He had been using his position as CFO to establish financial relationships with banks in countries that didn't have extradition treaties with the United States, creating a safe haven where he could disappear with the stolen money. Most disturbing of all, Walsh found evidence that Adam had been researching ways to ensure that I would be prosecuted for his crimes even after he disappeared. He had been consulting with lawyers about how to structure evidence to guarantee conviction, and he had even researched case law about family members being prosecuted for financial crimes. As we prepared to present our findings to Detective Santos, hoping to clear my name and expose Adam's extensive criminal network, Adam discovered our investigation. Someone had been feeding him information about our activities, possibly someone within the police department or the prosecutor's office who had been corrupted by the same criminal organization that Adam was working with. Adam accelerated his escape plan and moved to neutralize the threat I posed to his operation. I returned home from meeting with Walsh to find Adam waiting in my apartment with 2 armed men I didn't recognize. The golden child I had grown up with was gone, replaced by someone cold and desperate who was willing to threaten murder to protect his criminal enterprise. Adam calmly informed me that he knew about my investigation and demanded that I turn over all evidence that Walsh and I had gathered. He gave me a detailed description of everything we had discovered, proving that he had been monitoring our activities for weeks. The 2 men with him made it clear that they were prepared to kill me if I didn't cooperate with destroying the evidence and confessing to the embezzlement. For the first time in my life, I was truly afraid of my younger brother. The charming, successful man our family had always adored revealed himself to be someone capable of violence and murder. He told me I had 24 hours to destroy all evidence of his crimes and to sign a confession taking full responsibility for the embezzlement, or I would simply disappear like others who had threatened his operation. The 24-hour deadline Adam had given me felt like a countdown to my execution. As I sat in my apartment that night, staring at the business card Detective Santos had given me weeks earlier, I realized that I had only one chance to survive this nightmare and expose the truth about my brother's criminal empire. I called Detective Santos at 6 in the morning, waking her up to confess everything about the threats against my life and Adam's involvement with organized crime. Initially, she was skeptical, thinking this might be another desperate attempt to shift blame away from myself. But when I offered to wear a wire and meet with Adam to record his confession, she agreed to listen. Within hours, Detective Santos had coordinated with FBI agents who specialized in organized crime cases. Agent Michael Rodriguez explained that they had been investigating money laundering operations in our area for months and were eager to gather evidence about the criminal network that had been using legitimate businesses to clean illegal funds. Tommy Walsh worked with the federal agents to set up an elaborate surveillance operation. They equipped me with sophisticated recording equipment and positioned surveillance teams around the meeting location Adam had chosen. The plan was to record Adam's confession about the embezzlement and his threats against my life, while also gathering evidence about the larger criminal organization he was working with. But before the sting operation could take place, the FBI received intelligence that sent everyone into a panic. Based on wiretaps of known criminal associates, they learned that Adam was planning something much more drastic than simply threatening me. He was going to eliminate all potential witnesses to his crimes, starting with our parents. The same morning I was supposed to meet with Adam wearing the wire, FBI agents raided our family's construction company based on evidence Walsh and I had provided about the money laundering operation. They arrived with search warrants and forensic accountants, who immediately began documenting the extensive financial crimes that had been conducted through the business. My parents, Sarah and Robert, were arrested at the construction site and charged as potential accomplices to the money laundering scheme. The FBI agents explained that while they suspected my parents were unknowing victims of Adam's manipulation, they had to be detained until the full scope of their involvement could be determined. The media coverage was immediate and devastating, with news crews broadcasting footage of my parents being led away in handcuffs. Adam's reaction to the raid was swift and terrifying. Rather than fleeing immediately as I had expected, he became increasingly desperate and violent. Tommy Walsh's contacts in law enforcement warned us that Adam had put out a contract on my life through his criminal associates, offering a substantial sum for my death before I could testify about his activities. The wire operation took on new urgency as federal agents realized that Adam's desperation made him more dangerous, but also more likely to confess to his crimes on tape. I met Adam at the abandoned warehouse he had chosen, wearing recording equipment that would capture everything he said while FBI agents positioned themselves around the building. Adam appeared calm when I arrived, but his demeanor quickly changed when I refused to sign the confession he had prepared. He admitted to the entire criminal operation, including his theft from the family business and his involvement with the money laundering scheme. He revealed that he had never cared about our family and had always planned to disappear with stolen millions once he had accumulated enough money to live comfortably overseas. But Adam had one final revelation that sent chills down my spine. He told me that he had planted explosive devices in our parents' house, timed to detonate during the evening news cycle when the media coverage of their arrest would be at its peak. His plan was to kill Sarah and Robert, to eliminate them as potential witnesses, then flee the country while law enforcement was dealing with the bombing. The FBI teams listening to the wire lost contact with me as Adam's associates used sophisticated jamming equipment to block all communications in the area. I was on my own with a brother who had revealed himself to be capable of murdering our own parents to cover his tracks. The golden child our family had worshipped for decades was planning to commit the ultimate betrayal. I realized that I had to choose between my own safety and saving the lives of parents who had disowned me and believed the worst about me for months. Despite everything they had put me through, despite the years of favoritism and the recent months of hatred and rejection, I couldn't let Adam murder them in cold blood. I managed to escape from the warehouse during a moment when Adam was distracted by a phone call from one of his criminal associates. Racing through the city streets in a car I had borrowed from Walsh, I tried desperately to reach my parents' house before the bombs detonated. I called their phone number repeatedly, but they refused to answer because of the restraining order and their belief that I was a dangerous criminal. The FBI had lost track of my location and couldn't coordinate with local bomb disposal teams because they didn't know where the explosive devices were located. I was the only person who could warn my parents about the immediate threat to their lives, and I had to reach them before Adam's timeline ran out. I arrived at my childhood home to find Adam's car in the driveway and lights on throughout the house. Through the windows, I could see my parents sitting in the living room with Adam, apparently having a normal family conversation, while surrounded by hidden explosive devices that could kill them all at any moment. Adam was holding them hostage while maintaining the pretense of a concerned son who was protecting them from his dangerous older brother. When I burst through the front door, both Sarah and Robert looked at me with terror, believing that I had come to harm them just as Adam had warned. For the first time in decades, I was in the same room with my entire family, but instead of the reunion I had always imagined, we were all facing the possibility of violent death. Adam calmly revealed his true nature to our parents, explaining that he had been lying to them about everything and that he was prepared to kill them to protect his criminal operation. Sarah and Robert finally saw Adam for who he really was as he threatened their lives with casual indifference. The golden child they had favored for 30 years revealed himself to be someone who viewed them as disposable obstacles rather than beloved family members. They listened in horror as he detailed his plans to murder them and frame me for their deaths. Through their shock and terror, my parents finally understood that they had been catastrophically wrong about both of their sons. They realized that I had been telling the truth about Adam's crimes, and that their favoritism had enabled a monster who was now prepared to destroy them all. The confrontation in my childhood home felt surreal as the three people who had shaped my entire life sat frozen in terror while Adam explained his plan to murder them. My parents Sarah and Robert looked at me with a mixture of fear and dawning recognition that everything they had believed about their two sons was completely backwards. Adam held a detonator in his hand, calmly explaining that he had planted multiple explosive devices throughout the house and could kill us all instantly if anyone tried to leave or call for help. He told our parents that their deaths would be blamed on me, the unstable older brother who had finally snapped and decided to murder his family out of jealousy and resentment. I realized that I needed to keep Adam talking while hoping that the FBI would eventually track us to the house. I engaged him in conversation about his criminal activities, trying to get him to confess more details that might be picked up by any surveillance equipment that was still functioning despite his jamming devices. Adam seemed to enjoy revealing the full scope of his deception to our parents, describing in detail how he had manipulated them for years while stealing millions of dollars from the family business. He explained how he had systematically destroyed my reputation while positioning himself as the innocent victim of my jealousy and mental instability. Sarah began crying as she realized how thoroughly she had been deceived by the son she had always favored. She apologized to me through her tears, acknowledging that she had been blind to Adam's true nature and had treated me unfairly for decades. Robert sat in stunned silence, his face showing the devastation of a man who realized his life's work had been used for criminal purposes. Despite the immediate danger we all faced, I found myself forgiving my parents for their years of favoritism and their recent rejection of me. I understood that they had been manipulated by someone who was expert at deception, and their recognition of their mistakes was more meaningful than any apology I had ever imagined receiving. As we talked, I gradually moved closer to Adam, looking for an opportunity to overpower him and prevent him from detonating the explosives. But Adam was aware of my intentions and kept the detonator positioned so that any sudden movement would trigger the devices. He seemed to be enjoying the psychological torture of forcing us to confront our family dynamics while facing imminent death. The FBI bomb squad finally arrived after receiving intelligence about Adam's threat from their wiretaps of his criminal associates. Agent Rodriguez coordinated the tactical response, while bomb disposal experts worked to locate and defuse the explosive devices that Adam had hidden throughout the house. I could hear movement outside the house as law enforcement teams positioned themselves around the building, but Adam had anticipated this response and had positioned the bombs to prevent any rescue attempt. He told us that the devices were designed to detonate if anyone entered the house without his specific instructions. Realizing that we were running out of time, I made the desperate decision to physically attack Adam during a moment when he was distracted by sounds outside the house. We struggled for control of the detonator while my parents scrambled for safety, and I managed to knock the device from his hands before FBI agents stormed the house. The tactical team arrested Adam, while bomb disposal experts immediately began defusing the explosive devices he had planted throughout the house. There were 6 separate bombs hidden in walls and furniture, each powerful enough to completely destroy the house and kill anyone inside. The sophistication of the explosive devices revealed the extent of Adam's connections to professional criminals. As paramedics treated the minor injuries I had sustained during the struggle with Adam, I watched FBI agents arrest several of his criminal associates who had been monitoring the situation from nearby locations. The coordinated raids across the city resulted in the arrest of dozens of people involved in the money laundering operation that had used our family business as a front. But Adam had one final act of revenge that none of us had anticipated. While being processed for arrest, he revealed that he had been recording everything that had happened in the house and had arranged for a confession video to be automatically uploaded to social media platforms regardless of what happened to him. The video cleared my name completely, showing Adam admitting to all of his crimes while threatening to murder our parents. But it also implicated several community leaders and business owners who had unknowingly become involved in the money laundering scheme through legitimate business relationships with our family company. Detective Santos explained to me that Adam's final act was designed to destroy as many reputations as possible, ensuring that even his arrest would cause maximum damage to everyone around him. He had spent months planning not just his escape, but the complete destruction of our community's business and political leadership. The scope of the criminal network Adam had been involved with was revealed over the following days as FBI agents processed evidence from the raids. Our family's construction company had been used to launder over $20 million in criminal proceeds over a 3-year period, making it one of the largest money laundering operations ever discovered in our state. My parents were released from custody after investigators determined that they had been unwitting victims of Adam's manipulation rather than willing participants in his crimes. The federal prosecutor explained that Adam had been extraordinarily careful to keep them ignorant of his criminal activities while using their legitimate business as cover for his operations. The media attention was intense but ultimately vindicated my attempts to expose Adam's crimes. News reports detailed the sophisticated frame job he had constructed against me and the extensive criminal network he had been operating through our family business. The community that had rejected me began to understand that I had been the victim rather than the perpetrator. Adam was charged with embezzlement, money laundering, attempted murder, terrorism, and conspiracy charges that would likely result in a sentence of several decades in federal prison. His criminal associates faced similar charges, and the entire money laundering network was dismantled through coordinated law enforcement action. As I stood outside the courthouse, after Adam's arraignment, watching him being led away in federal custody, I realized that the brother I had grown up with had never really existed. The golden child our family had adored was a carefully constructed facade, hiding someone capable of the most extreme betrayal and violence. The legal proceedings that followed Adam's arrest were swift and decisive. Federal prosecutors had overwhelming evidence of his crimes, including the recordings from our confrontation and extensive financial documentation of his criminal activities. Adam's defense attorney advised him to accept a plea bargain rather than face trial on charges that could result in life imprisonment. Adam was ultimately sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for embezzlement, money laundering, attempted murder, and terrorism charges. The judge described his crimes as a profound betrayal of family trust and noted that his willingness to murder his own parents revealed a complete absence of moral character. Several of his criminal associates received similar sentences, effectively dismantling the entire money laundering network. The complete clearing of my name brought both relief and a strange sense of emptiness. For months, I had been fighting to prove my innocence and expose the truth about Adam's crimes. Now that justice had been served, I had to figure out how to rebuild a life that had been completely destroyed by his betrayal and manipulation. My parents, Sarah and Robert, underwent intensive family therapy with me to address the decades of favoritism that had enabled Adam's manipulation and damaged our relationships. The sessions were painful but necessary, forcing us to confront uncomfortable truths about our family dynamics and the ways we had all contributed to the dysfunction. Sarah acknowledged that her favoritism toward Adam had been extreme and unfair, admitting that she had consistently dismissed my achievements while making excuses for Adam's failures. She recognized that her unconditional support had actually harmed Adam by preventing him from developing genuine character and accountability for his actions. Robert struggled more with accepting his role in the family problems, but eventually acknowledged that his constant comparisons between his sons had created an unhealthy competitive dynamic. He realized that his rejection of my interest in the family business had been based on prejudice rather than any legitimate assessment of my abilities. The therapy process took nearly a year, but gradually we began to develop healthier relationships based on mutual respect rather than favoritism and resentment. My parents made genuine efforts to understand my perspective and to treat me as an equal rather than the disappointing older son they had always seen me as. With my name completely cleared and my professional reputation restored, I received job offers from several prestigious accounting firms who were impressed by my integrity during the investigation. I ultimately accepted a position as a forensic accountant, specializing in family business fraud, using my painful experience to help other families identify and prevent similar crimes. My work in forensic accounting proved both financially rewarding and emotionally satisfying. I helped dozens of families recover stolen assets and rebuild their businesses after discovering internal theft and fraud. Each case reminded me of my own experience, while allowing me to use my professional skills to prevent others from suffering similar betrayals. The expertise I developed in family business fraud cases led to opportunities to testify before state and federal committees about the need for stronger protections against internal financial crimes. I worked with legislators to develop new laws requiring independent oversight of family businesses above a certain size, helping to prevent the kind of systematic theft Adam had perpetrated. My personal relationships also began to heal as the truth about Adam's manipulation became widely known. Jessica reached out to apologize for believing his lies about me, acknowledging that she should have trusted her knowledge of my character rather than accepting manufactured evidence. While we didn't resume our romantic relationship, we were able to rebuild our friendship based on mutual respect and understanding. The professional relationships I had lost during the investigation were gradually restored as colleagues and clients learned about the sophisticated frame job Adam had constructed against me. Many people in our business community expressed admiration for my persistence in exposing the truth despite facing overwhelming pressure to accept blame for crimes I hadn't committed. I began dating Detective Maria Santos, who had initially investigated me for Adam's crimes, but had ultimately helped expose the truth about his criminal activities. Our relationship developed slowly as we both dealt with the professional and personal challenges created by the case, but we found that our shared experience had created a deep understanding and trust. 3 years after Adam's sentencing, Maria and I were married in a ceremony attended by my parents, who had genuinely changed their approach to family relationships. The wedding was a celebration of new beginnings and healthy family dynamics, representing the possibility of healing even after profound betrayal and manipulation. My parents worked to rebuild their construction company with ethical practices and transparent accounting procedures designed to prevent any future financial crimes. They established an employee ownership program that gave workers a stake in the company's success while ensuring that no single person could manipulate the financial systems. Robert and Sarah also became advocates for recognizing and preventing golden child favoritism in families, speaking at parenting conferences about the dangers of showing consistent preference for one child over others. They shared their story as a cautionary tale about how favoritism can enable manipulation and prevent parents from seeing their children's true natures. I maintained limited contact with Adam during his imprisonment, visiting him occasionally to offer the possibility of forgiveness while maintaining clear boundaries about acceptable behavior. Adam initially showed no remorse for his crimes, continuing to blame me for his downfall and expressing anger about the destruction of his plans. Over time, however, prison therapy programs began to have some effect on Adam's willingness to accept responsibility for his actions. He eventually wrote me a letter acknowledging the pain he had caused and asking for eventual forgiveness, though he understood that rebuilding any relationship would require years of demonstrated change in his character and behavior. The criminal investigation had revealed that Adam's crimes were even more extensive than we had initially discovered. Federal agents found evidence that he had been planning to frame me for multiple murders of business associates who had discovered his criminal activities. The depth of his deception and willingness to destroy innocent lives was truly staggering. I used my experience to write a book about family financial fraud that became a bestseller and helped thousands of families recognize warning signs of internal theft and manipulation. The book detailed not just the financial aspects of family business crimes, but the psychological manipulation tactics that enabled them to continue undetected. My forensic accounting practice grew to include training law enforcement officers about recognizing and investigating family business fraud. I developed educational programs that helped police and prosecutors understand the unique challenges of cases where family members are both victims and potential accomplices to financial crimes. The nonprofit organization I helped establish provided support and resources for families affected by internal financial crimes. We offered counseling services, legal assistance, and financial planning help for families trying to rebuild after discovering that trusted family members had betrayed them through theft and fraud. 5 years have passed since Adam was sentenced to federal prison, and my life today bears no resemblance to the nightmare I endured during those dark months, when my family believed I was a criminal and my reputation was destroyed by carefully constructed lies. The journey from that courthouse hallway where I watched my brother being led away in handcuffs to the life I have built today represents a transformation I could never have imagined. Maria and I now have two beautiful children, Emma and James, who are growing up in a home where honesty and fairness are fundamental values. We are determined to raise them without the favoritism and manipulation that poisoned my childhood, ensuring that both children know they are equally loved and valued for their individual qualities, rather than compared against each other. My parents, Sarah and Robert, have become devoted grandparents who treat Emma and James with equal affection and attention. The transformation in their parenting approach has been remarkable to witness. They speak openly with our children about the mistakes they made with Adam and me, using their experience as a teaching tool about the importance of treating all family members fairly. The construction company that my father built has not only recovered from the scandal, but has thrived under new ethical management practices. Robert implemented transparent accounting systems and employee oversight procedures that prevent any single person from manipulating the company's finances. The business has become a model for family companies seeking to prevent internal fraud. My forensic accounting practice has expanded to include offices in 3 states, with a team of specialists who help families recover from financial betrayal and rebuild their businesses. We have recovered over $50 million in stolen assets for our clients, and our work has led to the prosecution of dozens of family members who betrayed their relatives' trust through theft and fraud. The educational programs I developed are now taught in business schools and law enforcement academies across the country. These courses help future accountants, lawyers, and police officers understand the unique psychological and financial dynamics of family business crimes, improving their ability to investigate and prosecute these complex cases. Adam completed his first 5 years in federal prison and has begun participating in rehabilitation programs that focus on taking responsibility for his actions and developing empathy for his victims. His letters to me have shown gradual progress toward understanding the devastating impact of his crimes on our family and community. While I have chosen to maintain limited contact with Adam and offer him the possibility of eventual forgiveness, I have also been clear about the boundaries necessary to protect my own family. Any future relationship will depend on his demonstrated commitment to changing his character and making amends for the harm he caused. The book I wrote about our family's experience became a bestseller and has been translated into 12 languages, helping families around the world recognize and prevent similar betrayals. The success of the book has provided financial security for my family, while spreading awareness about the warning signs of family financial fraud. Maria's career in law enforcement has flourished as she became a specialist in investigating complex financial crimes involving family members. Her work has been recognized nationally, and she frequently speaks at conferences about the importance of recognizing manipulation tactics used by criminals to turn family members against each other. Our children, Emma and James, are now old enough to understand age-appropriate versions of our family's story, and we use it to teach them about the importance of honesty, integrity, and treating all people fairly regardless of their relationships or circumstances. They understand that real love sometimes means holding people accountable for their actions rather than enabling destructive behavior. The nonprofit organization we helped establish has grown to serve families in 30 states, providing counseling, legal assistance, and financial planning services for families recovering from internal fraud and theft. The organization has helped over 2,000 families rebuild their lives after discovering that trusted relatives had betrayed them. My relationship with my parents continues to strengthen as we work together on projects that help other families avoid the mistakes we made. Sarah and Robert regularly speak at conferences about the dangers of favoritism in families, sharing their story as a cautionary tale about how preferential treatment can enable manipulation and prevent parents from seeing their children clearly. The community that once rejected me based on Adam's lies has welcomed me back with genuine respect and admiration for my persistence in exposing the truth despite overwhelming pressure to accept blame for crimes I didn't commit. Local business leaders frequently consult with me about implementing safeguards against internal fraud in their own companies. The most profound lesson I learned from this experience is that true family love requires accountability rather than unconditional enabling. My parents' favoritism toward Adam wasn't actually love. It was a form of neglect that prevented him from developing genuine character and moral compass. Their willingness to excuse his failures and blame me for his problems ultimately harmed both of us in different but significant ways. I realized that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or pretending that harmful actions didn't occur. Instead, forgiveness means choosing to release resentment while maintaining appropriate boundaries to prevent future harm. I have forgiven my parents, and even Adam, but that forgiveness coexists with clear limits about acceptable behavior and consequences for violations of trust. The experience taught me that integrity and persistence ultimately triumph over even the most sophisticated deception and manipulation. Adam's lies were elaborate and convincing, but truth has a way of emerging when people are committed to uncovering it regardless of personal cost. My willingness to risk everything to expose his crimes ultimately saved not just my own reputation, but potentially many other lives. Perhaps most importantly, I learned that family healing is possible even after profound betrayal, but only when all parties are willing to acknowledge their mistakes and commit to fundamental changes in their behavior. The family relationships I have today with my parents and my new family with Maria and our children are healthier and more honest than anything I experienced growing up. My story has become a testament to the power of truth and the possibility of redemption even in the darkest circumstances. The golden child who seemed to have everything turned out to be hollow underneath, while the forgotten son who struggled for recognition found strength and purpose through adversity. Today, as I watch my children play in the backyard of our home, I am grateful for the painful journey that brought me to this place of peace and purpose. The nightmare of Adam's betrayal ultimately led to a life richer and more meaningful than anything I could have achieved if our family had continued down the path of favoritism and denial. Have you ever experienced favoritism in your family? Or do you know someone who has dealt with being overshadowed by a golden child? How do you think families can recognize and prevent the kind of destructive dynamics that enabled Adam's manipulation? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video, subscribing to our channel for more true stories about family challenges and redemption, and sharing it with anyone who might benefit from understanding how family favoritism can have devastating consequences. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I hope that sharing my experience helps other families build healthier, more honest relationships based on genuine love and accountability rather than destructive favoritism.